Good morning, everybody. Get settled in. Like Danielle said in that children's message, we are beginning our season of Lent here like we did on Wednesday at Ash Wednesday. And today we begin a sermon series that we're going to be going throughout our time as a church leading up to Easter throughout this season of Lent. And what we're going to be doing in this sermon series is we're going to look at the Gospel of John together. We're going to look at different elements of the Gospel of John that Jesus uses to teach about himself. These elements within the Gospel of John that Jesus uses are really basic. They're mundane. They're ordinary. If you actually look throughout all the Gospels, that's not unlike Jesus, but particularly in the Gospel of John, Jesus, he uses a lot of basic elements in the ways that he talks about himself and in stories that he starts to join in with in order that the people that are with him and that are hearing him and that are around him might understand more about who he is. And it wasn't only true of those people back then, but the reason that he keeps them so basic is that can be true of every single person that's come after them and read these stories all the way up to you and me today and going forward throughout time to anyone who ever might encounter these stories. That through these basic elements, as we look at them over the next few weeks leading up to Easter, we might get to know who Jesus is just a little bit better. And today, like Ben said, that element, that ordinary thing that we're going to be looking at is water, that we heard about from that story of the woman at the well in John chapter 4 just a few minutes ago. Because Jesus, he's always consistently identified himself and worked through these basic, ordinary elements. And today we're looking at water. But before we get there, I want to ask everybody a question. Is there anybody else besides me in this room right now who misses the old version of Instagram? And now I'm not, Tarsi, yes? Okay, I'm not only talking about like pre-COVID, pre-TikTok Instagram, where nowadays it's basically just TikTok a week and a half later in the form of Reels. I'm talking about circa 2012 Instagram. You know, when the icon for the app was actually the literal camera itself, and you clicked on it, and when you opened it up, 90% of your feed was sepia. That was the filter on everything. And if you happened to be following enough people, maybe just maybe, once a month, you would see something that's not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio square, because that's actually how it used to have to be. And so you'd have these thick white lines on either the sides or the tops in order to make it into a perfect square. And then it was thrown out of proportion, and it was terrible. But that's what it was supposed to be. Because no one would post on Instagram looking for a bunch of likes or trying to prove a point about anything. People used Instagram to just document their ordinary days and their ordinary lives. I would post and get 6 likes, but I wouldn't even think about it because that wasn't the point. Like, I would post, if we could go to the first slide, I actually posted this photo on my Instagram. And my caption was, triple double stuffed Oreo. Period. It's off there now because the way that people use Instagram now has changed, and I got so self-conscious about it that I went through and curated my own personal feed, deleted all of those old things. It's still on my Facebook. You can find it. It's posted in 2012. But that's what Instagram used to be like, and I miss that. Because we focused on the mundane and the ordinary, but now it's literally the exact opposite. It could not be more different. See, today, people use Instagram in the exact opposite way. I still remember where I was the very first time that I saw someone get more than 200 likes on an Instagram post. I was sitting in my high school biology classroom, and I wasn't even the one that saw it. It was my friend who was sitting next to me, and she's scrolling on her phone, and she sees one of our classmates get over 200 likes, and she audibly gasped and goes, "How in the world is it possible to get over 200 likes on a post?" Now that seems like absolutely nothing, right, Cortez? I mean, this is what you do for a living, man, right? Like, that's crazy. I can get 200 likes on a post now. But that it's completely changed because it's exactly the opposite. Now people use Instagram in order to post a story in order to show everyone about the latest thing that they've been doing. If I'm at a concert, I have to have my phone out and let everyone that's following me know about where I'm at. Or if I'm at this sports game or this event or I hike this mountain to this peak, I need to make sure that everyone sees what it is that I'm doing. That's the point of it now. Or maybe it's, doing a photo dump of your most recent vacation of 10, 12, 15 photos that all get set to the tune, because you can add a song overlaying them now for some reason, of whatever you think best encapsulates the vibe of your trip. Or it's following your favorite celebrities and for some reason thinking that knowing what they're posting on their Instagram is going to positively impact your life. That's what it's turned into, the exact opposite of the ordinary thing that it used to be. And this isn't a talk just railing against social media, so we're going to move on from that. But my point with this is that Instagram has basically encapsulated what happens to every single one of us in this world. It happens to pretty much everything that anyone pursues in this world. It's become about the extraordinary and the extravagant, the superior, the perfect, the successful, that which is set apart. You post on Instagram now in order to let everyone know that I'm as extraordinary as I think that I can be. Or you post so that you can get enough affirmation by getting enough likes on it that they can prove to you that, yeah, you actually have made it and you actually are as extraordinary as you wish that you were. Or maybe you don't get to that number and then you're disappointed about it. And it's not just with social media that this happens. Sometimes it's with our resumes where we're like, if I just need to give myself to accumulating as many things as I possibly can put on my resume. That way I'm distinct from everyone else that's out there in that world, that when I'm applying for that job or I'm trying to get into that grad school, they look at my resume and they say, that one's different, that one's better. That's the one I want. Or checking off this bucket list that you've created in your mind that you have to get done before you die because that's the thing that's going to make your life extraordinary. Or going to all these places around the world that you see online and read about that we have at our fingertips now because of how far we've come as a world with technology, being able to just go from one country to the next, to the next. Or us with this little burst of second winter that we're getting in St. Louis, which has kind of been a drag, at least for me when I walked out the door this morning, thinking, yeah, the only way that I could actually get some rest right now and put this winter behind me is to get to that spot for vacation on spring break. Because there's no way that I could actually get rested and feel comforted in my ordinary life. That's actually exactly opposite of what Jesus said. Or maybe it's like treating your kids that they need to be so distinct. They need to be extraordinary. I need to do whatever the heck that I can possibly do in order to set my kids up for the extraordinary life that I so desperately want for them. This happens within all of us. There's a reason that Apple's slogan is Think Different. It's because it's our propensity. It's hardwired into who we are, that we try to make ourselves and our own lives extraordinary. And the great irony that's come from all of this belief that I need to be unique in order to be enough, the great irony of all of this is that now the definition of conformity is trying to be unlike everyone else and set yourself apart from everyone. That's the only thing that actually ties us together, trying to be different from everyone. I was reading an article on this very idea as I was prepping for this week, and the way the person put it was this way. We may each be individual snowflakes, but by the time we hit the ground, we look around and we all look the exact same. And when you're in that spot, what you end up realizing, when you're that snowflake who's tried so hard to be extraordinary on your own, when you believed that you could get actual satisfaction and quench your thirst on your own through whatever means it is in your life, and you look around, you realize that all that you really are is just an ordinary sinner that's in need of help, just like everyone else around you. That's all that any of us are. Or as William James put it, we have an innate propensity to get ourselves noticed, and noticed favorably by our own kind. Now, I want you to hear me. I'm not saying that success and even striving for it and having good desires is a bad thing. All of that is good. Doing extraordinary things is good. Jesus literally gives us an extraordinary task as his church. Those should be leaned into. But what I am saying is that when you fall into the trap and you believe the lie that the way to be extraordinary, that the reason for your existence is to try and do it on your own and believe that you yourself can get there, that's when we have a problem. And that's the problem that I think this woman that Jesus met at that well that day, she walked up to that well experiencing and going through. See, she was thirsting to be special, to be distinct, to be differentiated from everyone else, to be extraordinary. And like we heard Jesus say in the second half of their conversation, the way that she tried to find that distinctness was with her relationships with men. Like Jesus said when he told her what he knew about her, he's like, you have 5 husbands, or you've had 5. And the guy that you're with right now, he's not even one of those. So maybe there's even more involved. And now we don't know from just this simple text, this is all that we have on this, we don't know the direction that those relationships started from. I mean, maybe she was the one that exclusively was trying to pursue those in order to become extraordinary herself, thinking that the more that she could get, or if she just found the right one, then that would let her feel worth it. Or maybe it was the exact opposite. Maybe the men in her town and in their culture were taking advantage of her because that was something that was really easy to have happen back then. And so she was simply just getting passed around. If you ask me, I think it probably was a little bit of both. That maybe she started out thinking that could be her route to being distinct, and then she quickly realized, I can't do this. She looked around, saw the snow around her, I'm just like all of them. And then people started to prey on her when she started to turn in on herself and get ashamed of what she had become. What we do know for sure is that day when she went out to that well, she went out, like Dr. Haupt said, at the 6th hour, about noon. And that was a ridiculous time to be going to that well. The reason that we have a conversation of just her and Jesus at this well is because everyone else would have been going out in the morning. That was the hottest time of the day. The time that you would be guaranteed to see next to nobody at that well. And the reason that she was doing that was because she didn't want to run into any of those people that would have been filling up their own buckets for water that day. Maybe it was that she didn't want to run the risk of meeting someone else, seeing someone from her past, seeing someone who would make fun of her. I don't know exactly what it was, but it literally led to her being separated from every single other person in that town, only in the exact opposite way than she wanted to be. Just like you and me, she wanted to be extraordinary. She wanted to be set apart. She wanted to be distinct. When she walked out to that well around noontime, what she realized was, I'm set apart in the exact opposite way than I wish I was. And that's where she was at when she met Jesus. But I want you to notice that that's actually not where Jesus meets her. See, Jesus, when he saw her at that well that day, he knew everything about her. But he doesn't bring up the fact that he knows the amount of husbands that she's had until late on in their conversation. He doesn't even bring it up until after he's already brought up to her that he has living water that he could give to her. No, that's not where he starts with. That's not how he makes the connection with her. The way that he connects to her is in the most ordinary way possible. He walks up to her and he says, give me a drink. Would you get me a glass of water? It's like if he stayed over at your house and he was on your couch, but he's never been there before, and he wakes up in the morning and he's like, I don't know where the glasses are. Can I have a cup of water? I'm thirsty. And now maybe, him asking her to get him a drink was his way of getting her to realize, oh, I myself also am thirsty, and the thirst that I have is even deeper than physical thirst. But I do think it probably dignified her, at least a little bit. I mean, could you imagine being in her situation at the end of her rope like she was, seeing herself as she saw herself, and then eventually realizing that the Son of Man, the Messiah, asked you for help to get water? And not only that, but he's a Jew compared to her being a Samaritan, like John narrates in our text. There was hostile tensions there. They did not like to associate with each other. And he's a male and she's a female, and she knows her backstory. And he's a rabbi of all things, talking to her. That is scandalous. But in the midst of that scandal, he meets her in the most ordinary way possible. Hey, can you give me a drink? Because Jesus, what you're going to realize as we continue to go through this series and encounter all these ordinary ways that he meets people in order to tell us about himself, there's something about him that she realized when he did that he seems relatively uninterested with the ways that we try to dignify ourselves in our own eyes. He doesn't seem to care to the point of not associating with us with the ways that we try to become extraordinary in our own ways. He knows about them. He sees them, but he sees through them. And he sees her as special in the midst of the ways that he knew in his mind that she was trying to be extraordinary, that she was trying to be distinct from everyone else. And he looks right through it and he sees her for who he truly sees her as. Someone to love, someone who needs him and his living water, someone who is thirsty and trying as hard as she possibly can to quench that thirst, and knows that she's separated for all the wrong reasons. And that's where he meets her. It's only after that. It's only after that Jesus acknowledges to her that he knows every bit of her backstory, that he's read her resume, that he knows her up and down, inside and out. So the question is like, well, why would he do that? Well, I think the reason that Jesus does that when he says, go and call your husband and bring him here, is he's putting his finger, the only finger that can contain living water, that can actually meet her needs, that can actually satisfy, that can actually quench that thirst. He's putting it on that point of pain, that thing that she knows in the back of her mind has separated her for all those wrong reasons. And he's touching it. He's not doing it to press and make it hurt. He's not doing it to press and make her feel ashamed of it. He's not doing it to make her just want to cower and run away in fear. He's doing it because he wants to point out to her that I don't care how many times you come back to this method of trying to make yourself extraordinary. I don't care how many other avenues besides this one that you might try. It's not possible. It's futile. But I want to tell you that just because I know about it doesn't mean I'm going to do anything about it other than tell you that I, who am touching it, have the answer you're looking for. I, whom touching it, see it and know about it, and I want you anyway. And for some weird reason that we call grace in the church, it's actually kind of the reason that I want you. It's the thing about you that is that which qualifies you for me to give you the living water inside of me. All you got to do is acknowledge it. And that's what Jesus does. That's where he meets her. He starts in the most ordinary way in order to tell him about who he is. As a kid, I went to Disney World with my parents, and we came back with this puzzle. And if we want to throw it on the screen, it's a puzzle of a photo mosaic of Mickey Mouse, where, I'm sure you guys have all seen photo mosaics before, where each individual piece is a little scene from a Disney movie or a Disney TV show that gets put together, and because they're so small, all you really see is the background color, and when they get pieced together, you see Mickey Mouse. The more that I've studied this book, the more that I've learned about Jesus and the person of Jesus, and the more that I've read this book, the more that I'm convinced that this is the best metaphor for how every single story inside of this is about Jesus. For how every single story, from Adam and Eve in the garden, to Abraham getting called, to the Exodus story that Ben helped read before we, in the Old Testament lesson, to all of the Israelites walking around in the wilderness, to all of their kings, to all of the prophets, to the Psalms, all the way through to Revelation. It's all about Jesus. And the way that it works is just like this. It's a bunch of tiny little stories that don't look that much like him, but when they get pieced together, you start to see him. And here's the thing about the stories that make up the mosaic of Jesus. If you zoomed in on them, most of them are ordinary. Most of them are really not that spectacular and that extraordinary in and of themselves. Most of them are like giving someone a drink of water or going out fishing with your friends and having this guy call to you and say, hey, toss it out one more time over the other side. Most of them are meeting in an upper room in order to just eat a meal together. That's what most of the stories within this book are about. But when those ordinary stories get pieced together, they become the most extraordinary story that has ever been told in the history of this world. And what they look like is this. They look like that, and they look like an empty tomb. And what happened with this woman when she encountered Jesus that day, what she learned when he met her in her ordinary circumstance, and he met her and he gave her the most ordinary means of relating to her, was her little tiny ordinary story became a piece in the puzzle that is the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. The greatest story ever told, she became a part of it. She started to define it. Her story became his story became hers. And the exact same thing is true for each and every single one of you in this room. Jesus, he's always met people in these incredibly ordinary ways. We're going to see it time and time again this Lent. We're going to experience it in a few minutes when you all come up here and we get to eat of simple bread and wine. But Jesus has promised that in the simplest of meals, he is going to somehow, by some miracle, tie himself and his story to you. And you don't just hear about it in that one. You get to touch it and taste it and smell it and experience it. Because he is so dead set on seeing through whatever it is that you've tried in your own life in order to pursue your own extraordinary status, in order to try and distinguish yourself from everyone else, that he wants to see you just as you are, and he wants you to know that he sees you in that way. Because that's the Jesus that we have. That's who the person of Jesus is. The same Jesus that would approach this woman in this incredibly ordinary way in order to tie her to his amazing, miraculous story of saving the world is the same Jesus that would leave the 99 and go after you, the one that went astray. The same Jesus that would do this with this woman is the same Jesus that would walk to the cross and be crucified so that you and I could be woven into his story that he's been doing, that he's been crafting, that he's been speaking and weaving all the way from the beginning. So what that woman realized, what she learned in this encounter with Jesus, is a couple truths that I think really just encapsulate what the Bible means. She learned that she is so much more valuable than she could ever possibly imagine. And at the exact same time, she's not that big of a deal. Jesus, he saw through all that mess. There's absolutely nothing that could keep her from his love and his grace and his mercy. There's nothing that could keep you. And so you are more valuable than you could ever possibly dream. And at the same time, you're not that big of a deal. Because the story, it's about Jesus. It's not about us. And G.K. Chesterton said that that's kind of freeing. And I think it is too. When she also realizes there's nothing that can keep her from the love of Christ. She can't sin enough to not be loved by Jesus. It's not possible. He's going to keep coming time and time again. And when you taste of that water, it's the only thing that can actually quench your thirst. Because that's the Jesus that we have. So when she left that well that day, she did not leave the same ordinary person that looked like all the other white snow that was around her. When she left that bucket at that well and she ran back into town and told everyone about who she had met and what she had experienced and who Jesus was, she was no longer ordinary. She was a part of the extraordinary story that Jesus was working. And that same thing is true of you. When I stand up here and I look at all of you as I preach to you today, I do not see a single ordinary person in this room. What I see is that in you. That is literally what you guys look like. You look like Jesus. Because he has made all of you his story. That's how much he cares about you. In his name, amen.